Welcome everyone to the Higher State Show. My name is Jan Rolstuk, also known as Healing Magic 27, and I'm having Stuart Elliott today as my guest in the show. We will talk about taking time today for my gratitude over offense diary, TTT for my good, which is the short form. You will see it in the title. Thanks for being here, Stuart.
It's my pleasure, and it's always wonderful to have conversations with you. So I'm excited to see where we end up with this beautiful conversation that's about to start.
Exactly. We never know where we're ending up in a conversation like that, as it's always very flowing. Stuart and I had several conversations. He already helped me a lot in tapping even more into my groundedness and really grounding the wisdom down so I can basically travel light, but also take my ground with me.
Yeah,
So
that was beautiful. That just came from somewhere special.
exactly, yeah. So Stuart is a very wise man, and I'm very looking forward to it. And just before we started going or recording, we had the conversation about the gratitude, right? I think this will be
Mhm.
it's a main aspect of life in general, and being grateful for the small things, right? That we don't even have to find something big, is what Stuart just said, but we can be grateful for the small things. So, what example is coming there in your head for you right now?
Well, the first one is, my daughter, youngest daughter. She's only 4 years old, so she loves to wait until the last minute to blow her nose. And I was so grateful to have a tissue in my pocket because it's not nice to see it hanging down from her nose. And that's something so small, that you've got a little paper tissue that someone's made that and you can just give it to her and then she can blow her nose and go away. But it doesn't have to be anything. It can be just the smallest thing in the world. I mean, everybody eats food at some stage in their life, but how many people are actually grateful that they had that or they took that time to eat the food and then think about what the food's going to do for their body?
Exactly.
It's little things, and I think that the power is in the multiplication of the little things. I mean, if you think of insects, ants, for instance, they can move the world basically with their strength because they're all working together, but yet they're so small and fragile on their own.
Exactly. It's a great analogy that you bring there with the ants, and they don't
Mhm.
think or they don't complain about
Oh.
them working and doing what they're doing. As
Mhm.
we humans as a collective, we tend to complain, collectively speaking. I don't like complaints. If I find myself complaining, I see that I'm calming myself very fast. It's not that I'm not getting frustrated
Mhm.
or angry at times, but it's about how I use this for my advantage. And I also can be grateful for me being even aware of that, just to take an example of what I also can be grateful for.
Well, this is it. It's those small moments. I mean, once we become aware of it and we accept it, then we have that opportunity to be grateful. And gratitude is so pervasive if you allow it or choose it to be. It's everywhere. I mean, one of my personal gratitude meditations is this picture in the background. I'm in a beautiful area of the world and I see this, and it just reminds me of how beautiful this earth is. This earth that supports all of us, and how we have opportunities to travel to see different scenery and just admire this beautiful planet that we live on. So, it doesn't have to be anything big, but it's every little thing is special.
Exactly. And I had to learn this as an example. I grew up and we haven't practiced gratitude, and I think many people can relate with that too. And I started recently even being aware and grateful for a fork in my hand or a spoon in
Mhm.
my hand, the house that
Mhm.
I'm living in, and sending that energy into the house allows me to feel even better. And I feel a resonance coming back of appreciation for
Mhm.
myself. So we have to see to really, I mean, gratitude is a great way for us to raise our energy as well, which is the name
Mhm.
of the show, the Higher State Show. It is really about finding ways to become better every day, to put it in another term. And gratitude is a key aspect of life. And for me, when I started up doing my gratitude list or wrote about things that I'm grateful for, it felt a little bit weird. And I have to be honest with that it wasn't something that was flowing right away, because it was difficult in a way to start doing this. It's a new habit, it's a new behavior, and it takes a little bit more effort, willpower, if you wish to say it that way, to get it started. But it has been those small improvements and just staying with it continuously, also if I haven't done it daily. But step by step, I developed that habit, and now it's automated. So sometimes it's not that I say, okay, I take my journal and I'm writing things down that I'm grateful for, but whatever comes out is right in this moment. And many times I do also have a part in it where I practice the gratitude in the moment.
Yeah, and I think that gratitude, once you start becoming more aware of it, it develops into something you are rather than something you do. And that allows you to see things in different ways. I mean, for instance, I had a conversation this morning with a gentleman, and he said that he just looked out his window and he saw a plant there, but he's never seen it before in the same way he's seeing it now. Because before he was just looking but not seeing. And now he's experiencing and seeing at the same time. So there's a whole different dimension, different shades of color, different shapes, and everything else about it. And that allowed him to be grateful for that experience at that moment, and just to see things in a different way rather than just glancing and not seeing. So it's so pervasive. It is a part of our life. And how many people, I mean, I've been there myself. How many people don't actually see the environment, or even worse, they don't see the partner they're living with or the family members they're living with?
Mhm.
And because they don't see them, they just see this representation, should we see, they don't understand, and they don't have the conversations, and they don't even appreciate half the time.
Same with the food.
Yeah.
How does it taste, right? What is the texture?
Mm-hmm.
How is the sensation?
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is because people have difficulties to connect with the moment, to connect with themselves, with their feelings, emotions, with their way of being. And because of the disconnectedness, they don't think about those things, right? And I
No,
have been there as well to a certain degree, where I found myself where I was eating so fast and so much that I could
mechanically,
just like,
mechanically, yeah.
and you
Yeah.
exactly, and this is mainly has been caused through emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Emotional eating, or I wanted to give me some love, but I didn't appreciate the food at this moment. And
Yeah.
also they're all living organism, and it makes a
Mm.
difference to learn to appreciate them.
Yeah, and we take it for granted. For instance, I like to drink Chinese tea, and I've got some tea here now at the moment, which I'm just going to take a sip of. But there's a whole process that is involved in producing the tea, which starts right at the very early stages in the plant, and then it takes in the goodness from the sun, the water, the goodness and the flavor from the ground, and all these things to produce these leaves. And then someone comes and takes the leaves, and they take different parts of the plant to make different types of tea, and then they prepare it in a special way depending on the type of tea they're going to make. And eventually it's cooked or it's dried over charcoal fires or something like that, and then you take it, you buy it at the shop or wherever, you take it home, and then depending on the type of tea, depends what temperature the water should be, and it's got to be good water, not chlorinated tap water, but mineral water preferably. And then you can really appreciate the tea. But if you just stop there and just appreciate the flavor, you miss out everything that went into it. And there's a whole science there, a whole thing there. And in China, that they also say that tea will take on the flavor and the energy of the people it's drunk with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very, very beautiful thing to think about. If you have this particular type of tea, for instance, Rogui is a type of tea in China, which, it means, Gui is good. I'm trying to think of the name. Let me give you a different one, which I know the name of. I can do the translation. Tilohan is Iron Goddess, and it's about the, a mythical person in the sky. But it tastes a certain way. But when you're with a group of friends, good friends, it tastes different. It opens up. It produces a different flavor, a totally, totally different flavor. And there's an energy that comes with it because of the energy of the people who are surrounding and imbibing it in it. So that is something very, very special that many people just, they don't think about. And going back to food, we just gobble it down. We just take it for granted. We don't see what has been involved in the preparation from the very, very early stages and how much goodness it has got from the earth, if at all.
Mm-hmm. I've just seen an experiment on Facebook. I've heard about this before, when they observe water and water drops or snowflakes even, right? And depending on the surrounding, the snowflake can be very geometric, very in symmetry. Though if the air is not clean in big cities, an example, you will have another type of snowflake. And then you have when the air is pure and clean and lots of trees are around, right? The smog isn't there. And people actually channeled energy and love to tap water, right? You name the tap water, and it's usually not clean. So they channeled energy to the water, and they could see how it became more in symmetry, more beautiful looking, rather than no real geometric shapes is quite to see in the moment before this, because it's just dirty and not clean, not fresh, not healthy water.
And not appreciated, I would
Not
suggest as
appreciated.
well.
So if I know still something in, right, or my bottles, I do buy water currently in the stores because with a good pH level, because I want to have clean water. And I also usually give a good energy to the water that I'm drinking, to the food that I'm eating, and take time also to connect with it before I'm doing so. And since I started doing this in the last years, I felt more energy. The food was giving me more power. I wasn't as drained. I wasn't even craving as much anymore as well. So there are many benefits, health-wise, and your energy rises that I
Definitely.
didn't knew before, that the effect can be like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you talk about water because I remember once I went to a water tasting at a tea shop. And what they did was they had a certain type of tea, and then they made it 6 different times with water, with different waters. And we had a blind tasting and we had to give our feedback. And the unanimous agreement with there was one particular water had the much better flavor and why and everything else. And one of the lowest on the list was tap water. And it was unanimously the same: dead, lifeless, chemically tainted, this type of thing. And it was very, very instructive because you wouldn't think that water can make such a difference to the taste of a tea. But
And
it
then
did.
imagine how much water do we have in our being, in our
Body.
physical
Yeah.
body. And
Yeah.
then the way that we talk to ourselves, right? We feel rejuvenated. I felt I had a 20 days fast, only liquid and mainly coconut water, some juices. I was really able to 2 days in between no water at all. So I was just basically doing nothing and laying and absorbing the air, and I could take the nutrients from the air and I could feel them in another level. But I was also able to taste water. I was able to taste it before, and I haven't even had it. So usually I don't have that because I just want water and I go for it. But also with food in a restaurant, I could taste and I could feel the nutrients of the food that other people were eating. And my body was very, very aware of the goods and the bads in food. It's a very interesting observation that comes when we let go of the attachment of, oh, I have to eat now. So it's been a very interesting exploration.
Yeah, and I think you have to have the right mindset to be able to have that exploration. Otherwise, you're not going to get the benefits, because as much as anything else, it is that mindset that allows you to do those things and gives you that ability to connect to whatever it is, whether it's the energy of the food or the taste of the food, which is any energy anyway. But it's something very interesting, and there are a lot of people who maybe wouldn't be able to do that, or wouldn't get the same sort of benefits or the same understanding that you did, because they're not at that stage that you are.
It's the right mindset, and what I say and what I became very aware of is the way that I talk to myself and the way that I believe, and therefore I do attract certain things and make things happen in my life that other people wouldn't, in terms of the self-healing aspect, or the way I feel, being energized, feeling light, feeling great. Other people don't feel like that because the way they talk to themselves and the way their beliefs are set up, they're different. And this is then again what we have to see, those different layers of awareness, different levels, different states of awareness that make a massive, a large impact on the way how we live and feel, and also project ourselves out into the world. And I hear what you're saying there, but I believe that everyone, if they really want it, right, they can experience this.
Of course, and again, that goes back to the mindset where you are at this moment in your life as an individual. And we're all at different phases in our development, in our growth. And for some people, we're not ready, and some people, they are ready. Some people have already experienced it and moved on to the next phase. So it is a very, very big thing, mindset, isn't it?
The question really, what do we want? What are we looking for in this life? And then if we
That's a
receive,
very, very big question. What are we looking
bro,
for in this life?
bro, like people usually they have difficulties to tell you what they want, but mostly it is related to happiness, right? If
What
we,
is happiness, though? That's the other question.
what is happiness? Like,
What is
okay,
success?
what is success? Okay, let's go into that topic.
Can I just give you one of my most famous quotations by somebody about success?
Yeah.
It's by Jim Rohn. I don't know whether you have heard of Jim Rohn, but he was a motivational speaker, and he passed away a few years ago. But one of his things, and I was lucky enough to see him many years ago in South Africa, but one of his statements is about success, and it's always, always, always stuck with me. And I just think there's so much wisdom in it. And it is, success is that thing that you attract through the person you become. So people are chasing it, but they're not changing. So they never find it.
Doing the same things, expecting different
Yeah.
results.
Yeah. Looking, rather than going within and changing themselves, then they find the success that's been so elusive. And that's why what is success is such a big question, because I think it's different for every single person. And there's different levels of success, isn't there? I mean, for instance, I've advised people to write a success diary, and basically anything that worked according to your plan at that time is a success. You got up in the morning, that was a success. You
made
grabbed
your meal.
Yeah, any little thing is a success. And once you do that and you start journaling it, just like with the gratitude diary, once you start journaling, you have this physical representation of how successful you already are. Now, just imagine you've been doing it for a couple of years and you've got this bookcase full of all these little success diaries. And you go into your room and you see all of them. What message is that giving you about how successful you are already? It's such a powerful, powerful thing, because it's a physical representation that you can actually attach to.
Right. For me right now, what I see as success and happening is that my spine becomes more and more straight. and the way
Mm-hmm.
that I feel, the way that I sit, and the
Mm-hmm.
energy flowing through my body. So this now for me is a success, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I'm sitting in a way that feels aligned, feels good, and I'm energized with that. Actually, what is that? I'm just seeing, I don't know what that is, an angel above your head, in the clouds, or like
It could
some
be. It
flying.
could be.
Yeah,
It could be. Yeah. It depends how
awesome.
you interpret it. Yeah.
Exactly. And then again, the interpretation is what I want to talk with you about, because
Mm-hmm.
I know you will have some great advice to give for people who eventually struggle with perceiving happiness the way that makes them long-term happy rather than short-term.
Yeah. Well, I think short term is external and long term is internal. I think that's the very basic definition for me. And
I
there's a
like
lot
the way
more
you
behind
think.
that.
What I say always is that people do choose short-term pleasure for long-term suffering rather
Mm-hmm.
than to now actually go within and sit with it, and then therefore having a long-term satisfaction and
Mm-hmm.
long-term happiness and building on that.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything very big to give you that happiness if it's coming from within. Because again, it's one little thing plus another thing plus another thing plus another thing. Just the very fact that you've got water makes you
Hmm.
happy.
Hmm.
The very fact that you're able to have a conversation with somebody can make you happy. But that's not an external thing, because when you have a conversation, and I stress conversation rather than talking to somebody, because it's a two-way thing. Then you get involved within it, and it takes you out of yourself and allows you to explore different things. And by getting out of yourself and that negativity that a lot of people live in, it allows the happiness to flow in, and you start seeing the joy and the beauty of you as an individual. So it's, there's no one thing I would suggest that is you can define as happiness, apart from it's something within us. And if you think back, to childhood, most children, when they're first born, they're happy. They may cry and this and
Hmm.
that, but they're generally deep down, they're happy. And yet when we get older, things happen in life. We're conditioned in ways, and we start having doubt. We start getting all sorts of the nonsense that we take with us. And then our default state, because it's bombarding on us, seems to be unhappiness and negativity. And it's a challenge sometimes to get out of that, because it's so ever present all around us. And then if you think about a lot of people, their friends are all negative, so they all sit together and have a pity fest, and all they do is creating more and more and more misery or negativity, and not finding the happiness. So
A pity
it's,
fest. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's something that we seem to live in. And yet, if you go to a group of people and they're in this pity fest and you're so happy and you're full of life, one of the first things they're going to say to you is, what the heck have you got to be happy about? Why are you smiling so much? Because
And
they
this
can't
is
relate
something
to that.
again, I walk around in the street, right? And sometimes I just feel like not looking at anyone. But if I
Mm-hmm.
do look at everyone, I usually try to send some light, to
Mm-hmm.
smile. And people there many times are overwhelmed with that and they don't even know how to handle it. And this
Yeah.
is the collective negativity that is still around,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not normal to smile at strangers.
Yeah.
But if you go into an Asian country where you live, like when I stayed in Bali, it is
Mm-hmm.
normal to get a smile from the people.
Yeah. And that's very, very warming, isn't it? It gives you
Hmm.
such a different feeling. And there was a really good example of that type of thing on one of the networking calls I was on. Ken Caputo. He shared this story of some work they were doing with some of the students. Of it was basically to give that appreciation to someone by an extra 10% just by looking at them in the eyes, or whatever, strangers and stuff like that. And one of the stories one of the students said is that he was getting on the school bus, and there was another fellow classmate there, And he just looked at him in a way and just showed, 10% more appreciation and love for this and respect for the person. And the long story is that that person he showed it to had already made his mind up before that moment that he's going to commit suicide that day. And it changed his life. It stopped him. It prevented him from doing that because somebody actually took that little time to show appreciation for him as a person.
Mm-hmm. Again,
And
the
that's so
small things,
powerful.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Exactly.
so powerful. And as you say, when you went to Bali and you walk down the street and people smile at you, they acknowledge you, they recognize you, they respect you. It makes a whole difference in the world. And talking of respect, I'll never forget the Zulu tribe in Southern Africa. Their greeting, Sabona, is about, I see you as a person. I respect you as a person. Everything about you, not just the body, but everything about you, your trials, your tribulations, your triumphs, everything. And the answer that the traditional answer is Shiboka, which is, I exist for you. Now, isn't that a wonderful way to recognize people and to greet people? And they can be total strangers. And have that depth of meaning and understanding exchanged in that first greeting.
Depth of meaning. Right. I see that many people aren't deep.
No.
They are not having meaningful conversations that move them to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I've always struggled with that, being on parties or meeting people, and they're good to talk about bullshit. They're good to talk about small talk, right? How the weather is at. And I don't know if you listen to the rain. I hope it wasn't too distracting.
No, not
However,
yet.
however, people have like I wish, right, for the collective to develop more depth in the way that they do communicate with each other, the way they live their lives, and to place more deep meaning on their existence. So what would you think is a way for people to gain more meaning in their lives?
Well, I think there's a couple of levels there. The first one is I was a very shy teenager. So I understand why there's so much small talk, because I couldn't talk to people, but I could see the people. I was waiting for them to come over me and I could read them. I learned to read people. And a lot of the people who were doing all the small talk were also insecure, but they'd mastered it in a way of talking about nonsense, just talking on the surface. So they grew that skill there. Whereas me being quieter, I was growing in a different way and being observational and understanding more. And I think that stood me in good stead as I got older, because I'm able to have deeper conversations. And secondly, I think you don't have to have an in-depth discussion with everybody, but you can have a meaningful exchange and show that appreciation, just like the Zulus do when they have their greeting. For instance, in the part of the UK I grew up with, anybody you pass in the street, you say good morning to, or good afternoon, or some other pleasantry. But some people you say it to, they walk past, their heads down, they've got the weight of the world on their shoulders, and they just grunt at you. Okay, that's their journey, that's their path, leave them. But other people, they make this genuine smile from the heart. And you just walk past and you say good morning to somebody, and then you get this beautiful opening of love from them. You've both made each other's day. Now, wouldn't it be beautiful we could do that? We don't need to have a deeper conversation because that's not the time or the place for it, but we've just touched someone's life.
I think it is already a very deep conversation, although we're not using our words, right? And then again, like how are we showing up, and how much depth do we have within ourselves to put meaning into everything that we do, to be intentional in everything that we do, right? To show love and appreciation for everyone. or for everything that we do. Because if I don't appreciate myself and doing what I'm doing, why am I doing it?
Well, that's the question, and that's a lot of things you just do mechanically without even thinking about it. And it is about how you recognize the person as a real living, breathing human being connected, as we all are, to the universal energy, or whether you just see a physical outline of a thing and you don't even see humanity in it. And that's what a lot of people don't see. They just walk past, they don't see anything. They've divorced themselves from that reality. And there could be many reasons why people do that. Some of it could be self-preservation if you're in a very violent area, or a big city or something like that. And there could be many cultural things, but it is about that respecting this beauty that's for you, this beauty of a human being that's connected to the world.
Mm-hmm. And therefore, to see the beauty in others, we do have to see the beauty within us.
Of course, yeah.
And the same with the love aspects of it, right? In the last days, which came more up, is that I don't have to like everyone, but I can love everyone. And I can
Well,
love
that's a
everyone
very big distinction, isn't it?
without having to like everyone and everything that they do.
Yeah.
Because the whole concept of love is misunderstood in how I perceive it.
Yeah.
Collectively, it is not just, okay, hello, let's make another one of us. It is not like that, right? Or people
No.
think, because they're half, oh, I'm half complete, she's half complete, let's come together and now we are full. And then they actually miss out on the whole thing, that they're already complete themselves, but they haven't acknowledged themselves as complete yet. And this is why they have a problem then in the relationship. And I just came out of a karmic relationship as an example, and I saw the pattern right away. And the moment that we could sit together and communicate clearly about what truly matters for us, we could heal the whole situation, and everything has been crystal clear that we're moving into different directions. But sometimes we have to go into those relationships to see the deeper meaning of life and who we are, what we like, what we don't like, and therefore experiencing ourselves. Though the moment that we do become aware of us not being happy and needing to change ourselves or can't grow any longer, then we have to start to make a choice to, okay, where do I want to go? If I choose happiness, okay, yeah, how does happiness looks for me? It might look different for her, right? Her happiness and my happiness, they may have a similar feeling, though maybe the outline looks different. We maybe like different things, right? If I want to hang out on I don't know, I want to go to the beach and she likes to go into the forest, right? We either can find a compromise, and both is great, don't get me wrong. But if it's always a discussion of doing it, or we want to make it right for the other, and we
There's
don't
no
tell our
joy.
own opinion about it, right? It is about, like, we have to speak, to learn to speak our truth, right? And we all perceive things differently. We all do like things and some things not, right? Preferences. But to actually be as confident as we be confident, and then communicating from that place, that somehow takes courage. Why ever it takes courage to be yourself, because all the mainstream, if you walk around like the ducks all in one direction, or the sheeps, right, all just following the one leader, like, this is just a reflection of us doing what we're doing on planet Earth. And it's about, like, how can we actually use our unique identity to use that, communicate the way that we perceive the world, sharing our experiences, sharing our trials and errors, helping other people through their lives with that, rather than pleasing people, saying yes to things you actually want to say no, right? Nodding and actually feel like, oh no, or not even moving away at times. So what is your take on what I've just said? I mean, I said a lot, but
Yeah, it's very black and white in some ways and very complicated in other ways. I mean, for instance, I would suggest the first part starts at a very young age when we're not really taught to love ourselves as individuals. We're taught we have to fit in, then we mustn't be proud, we mustn't do this. And it's all sort of, should we say, designed, whether it's consciously designed or unconsciously designed, but it's designed to make this harmonious society that we're supposed to live in at this moment. And we know, both of us know, that it's far from harmonious with all the nonsense that's going on in the world at the moment. But that was the overriding thing. And then you get, for instance, pride. How many people are taught to be proud of their achievements? Very few. We're taught that pride is a bad thing. It's a sin because it's boastful. It's this and this. But, if you just think back of it, when you were a little baby and you decided you wanted to walk, you were so pleased when you could walk because you've achieved something major and you recognize that. It was never told to you that you'd done anything, proudful. But you were proud of it yourself. You were so happy. You stand up straight and you walk and then you fall over, you get up, you do it again. And yet when we get older, we're taught not to do that. So we're conditioned away from that self-belief and that understanding of all the abilities we've had and all the achievements we've had. So in that respect, it's very difficult to actually recognize the beauty, the greatness of you as an individual.
mm-hmm.
And each of us have this problem. So if we can't recognize that greatness within us, how can we recognize it outside us, in other people? How can we even see them? And all the beautiful things. I mean, if I look at you and I think to myself, okay, he can walk, so what? I'm dismissing something very, very important about you. But if I look at you and say, look at that, he learned to grow, he struggled, he managed to walk, and now look at him. He can move around, he can go backpacking, he can do all these things. And I recognize that as a major, major achievement in your life. Then what am I doing? I'm showing respect to you as a person. And it's
I
the
like
same
where
with
your
languages.
I like where your focus is because this helps many people. Also, although me, right? Because I admit that those things that you see it from a perspective that is very helpful for many and for me as well, to appreciate the fact that I'm actually walking. And being grateful for the fact that I'm walking, that I learned to ride my bike, right? That I learned to throw rocks and to let them slide over the water. Those small things. And parents, they usually cheerlead the kids, right? Oh wow, great, well done. And when you get older,
They look down on you.
things turn out exactly. Things turn out to be a little bit different. And why do you
There's a point
think?
where those achievements switch, isn't there, to being boastful rather than being something to be recognized and celebrated in not a boastful way, but in a proud way from the individual.
Yeah,
Not to say, look how good I am, just to recognize my achievement.
exactly. It's a different energy you come with.
Yeah.
If you look at, why do you think is this changing from a parental perspective, that parents start up with like all being super proud of the child, letting the child know how good it does, right? How good it progress. And why do you think at times it becomes less and less when they grow up?
I would suggest that it's because it means the parent has to go inside and reconsider their beliefs that they picked up. For instance, a parent is seen or sees themselves as a source of wisdom. And they quite often try to condition their children into doing the things the same way, seeing the things the same way. But if the child doesn't want to, because it has its own belief system, then you have to either have your ego threatened because your authority in your mind is being threatened, or you have to go inside yourself and say, okay, well, is this the best way? And that takes courage as an individual level. It might be the best way that I've discovered up until now, but is it the best way? And that takes, as I say, it takes courage to look at that in that way. And if it's not the best way, then get outside yourself and see how you can grow and let that little child educate you into possibilities. But again, our ego gets threatened. I'm the parent. I know better because I've had 50 years doing this the most difficult way, where you showed me the most easy way, and I don't want to let go of that.
And now we're going into a very interesting topic. Well, where do we start there? I mean, you name so much, and it's the ego that is in the way. Like you already mentioned in a conversation that we had before, it's or today even as well, looking down, right? We're comparing ourselves in a way that is unhealthy. We can take comparison as a chance to grow, right? To see the differences, I believe, and to see, okay, wow, this is what I do, right? If I see something good in you, I'm like, okay, yes, I can take this and I can apply it in my life. I can see something good in everyone, or like some traits that they are better in that I am, or that I just need some improvement, or that I would love to improve, or means that I need to, but that I would love to have some improvement. Then I see this and I can basically copy and paste, but implement it the way that is right for me. It's not that I have to be that person. It's not that I have to do that in that way, but I can learn from other people. And I think that people look down to other people out of inner insecurity because the lack of self-worth and the lack of confidence that they have. And this is why they do judge other people the way that they do. This is why they can't even be joyful for their children, because they have to compare themselves in a negative way with them.
And just imagine, for instance, that you, as a very, very young child, were taught to tie your shoelaces in a very, very convoluted way. And you've been doing that and you've been practicing it all your life. You've got all these years of experience. So you've mastered this very complicated way and you struggled to master it. And now your child comes along, 3-year-old child, and suddenly ties the shoelaces in the most simple way. And your mind's blown. And you refuse to let go of that struggle you've had because you think it's diminishing you. And you don't want to say to yourself, look, I've struggled like, this for so long. You don't see the growth that you had and how you managed to master this complicated thing and all the actual beauty was there. You just see, no, I'm being made a fool of because I do it this way by this young child. And they know nothing.
I actually learned it in one day and I kept doing it. It was awesome.
Yeah. But I mean, you can imagine the challenge that an adult can have if they're so invested in that. And I think what we have to do as adults or parents even is open ourselves up and see things through other people's eyes, through other people's representation systems.
And how can we do that?
Understand. Well, step outside ourselves.
And how can, like, for someone who has difficulties with doing that, yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example. My youngest daughter, when she was about 3.5 last year, when she went back to kindergarten, after the summer holidays, they had a basketball competition. And we got her a basketball. And she just took to the basketball like a duck to water. She just got the ball and she's dunk, 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 bouncing. And very soon, half an hour later, she's nearly 100, consecutive bounces without any problems. And she loved it. And then a couple of days later, she came home from kindergarten and she was playing basketball. And I noticed she had no shoes on. And it's nearly winter, so it's quite chilly. So I said, put your shoes on. And now, in my mind, okay, I would have put the ball down, sat down, got the shoes, put them on. No. That's not the way it works. I'm bouncing the ball. So she's bouncing the ball. She goes to the shoes. She bends down, picks one shoe up, puts it on the one foot, standing on one foot, still bouncing the ball. And then she does the same with the other one. And then a little bit later, she's got a runny nose. Go grab a tissue, blow your nose. She goes over, bouncing away. Again, I'm thinking, in my mind, in my life, I will put the ball down and get the tissue. No, no, no. She does the same thing. She's bouncing the ball. She grabs the tissue. The box fell on the floor. She bends down, still bouncing the ball, picks the box up, puts it on the counter, grabs the tissue, blows her nose, goes to the rubbish bin and carries on. She didn't break stride once because she knew she could do that. Now, I could have got into ego and said, put the ball down and put your shoes on. But that's not the way she was seeing it. She saw, I can do it this way. This is the most natural way for me. Now, if we observe people and we see things and see what's working for them, that helps us to get outside of ourselves and our programming that we think this is the only way we can do something.
How do you think
yes, we can make suggestions.
How do you think can we develop that compassion? Because I see it. Well, I see that just to give people the context, that what I see is a lack of compassion towards the opponent, towards our fellow humans, right? Our friends, our families, our neighbors.
Do we recognize them as fellow humans first? That's a big question, isn't it?
Was it the universe turning around me? Yeah. I mean, it does, but it also does around you.
Yeah. But if we do we recognize that they have unique skills, unique abilities, different from us, maybe, different ways of seeing things, different ways of putting things together? Now, at a young age, you're taught in school how to do mathematics this way because this is the recognized way.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's a gentleman I know, he's totally dyslexic, he's in his 50s, and he knows more about the associations of numbers, and he can work out the most complicated things without doing addition, subtraction, or multiplication, because he knows the way numbers fit together. Mm-hmm. He's been taught in a totally different way. His mind works in a different way, so he sees things in a different way. Now, we don't appreciate that about someone. We label them as different, as retarded, or this, or that, or whatever negative word we choose to use at the time. We're not recognizing their beauty and their skill set as a human being and saying how we can grow from interacting with them, for understanding how they're seeing things. And if it doesn't work for us, that's fine. It doesn't mean it can't work for them, because we're different. We've got individual skills. So I think, again, it goes back to that ego. Let's get outside of our ego. Let's look at the individual as a complete system, if you like, a complete energy system, and see how they're making things happen in their world, what magic is happening inside them.
Mm-hmm. I like it. And therefore, somehow we have to develop that knowledge about ourselves so we can create our own systems, right? When we create our own systems, then therefore my system suits your system, right? Or we can come together and we can help each other's systems, supporting. And it's not me doing things the way that you do things, right? I brush my teeth a different way than you do.
Yeah, but I can look at you and I say, okay, well, I wonder how I can learn, what I can take away from that, the way you're doing it, and apply it to my system to make it more efficient for me. And again, that's because I can only do that if I respect you. And respect you as an individual and recognize that we've all got these unique talents, these unique ways of doing things. We see things differently. I mean, you go to a movie, we go to the same movie. We sit next to each other for the whole duration of the movie. We come out and we say, hey, do you remember that part about that? You say, I never saw that. Because you sat there, you've seen a different movie to me, because you're interpreting it the way that you're made to interpret it. And I interpret it the way I'm made to. And if we have an open conversation, yeah, we can talk about the movie. But if not, we're talking about different films. because we're individuals. But we try to look at everybody as the same. And if they're not the same, we judge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big thing that we're, it's been instilled in us. That's the source of a lot of trouble in the world, really.
It's the different
judgment.
Yeah, that we see ourselves as separated.
Mm-hmm. Again, you look at the typical science model over the last 100 years. It's about breaking things down into separation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We don't
it
see
is
the
about
planet as a
to
whole
come together,
system.
right? And I mean, I said it as well. I learn from everyone, and I love learning, and I love sharing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Another reason why I'm doing what I'm doing is like I learn out of every conversation that I have with you, and I
Mm-hmm.
can sit after this and I'm like, wow, right? So not today, I'm a little bit
But
tired
you're
because
not alone.
I have had a long night, but
Yeah, but you're not alone in that. You see,
and
I also grow and I also
it's
learn from it.
but it's the
It's
statement of
mutual.
alone, all
Mm-hmm.
one, alone, and we have
Mm-hmm.
to see what does it mean,
Mm-hmm.
right? The power of the words that we use. Like
Oh yeah,
I
that's
thought
another story.
I'm alone, but I was associating it with like, oh, never no one is with me. But actually
Mm-hmm.
I was super connected with myself and those moments of being alone or feeling alone, the dark night of the soul, how people say, right? And it's those moments when I feel that everything changes and the whole world seems to change and I don't even understand it. When I first spiritually because or when I woke up, how people say you wake up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The whole world was changing for me. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what the is going on here? I couldn't make it just seemed so weird and it didn't stop. It just became weirder and weirder. And this is kind of cool because what I did rediscover is that when I was younger, I had that. And the more that I did the healing on myself in the last few years, and I've healed lots of things very fast, very rapidly, just those drop-ins, they came in, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I remember things from childhood, from the way that I perceived things, conversations with parents, moments when I was sitting alone, crying. And I went back in those moments and another I chose another meaning for those situations
Yeah.
happening to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And many times we carry this trauma with us
But
along the
it's
life.
invented trauma, isn't it, sometimes?
Mm-hmm. And this is the story that we choose to make up,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not real true. The same way that children don't get the attention, and when they don't get it with asking friendly, they do find a way to get your attention, right? And
Okay,
then
I just
they
remember this beautiful story about that. I could share with you just a second.
yeah, yeah, please do. And then it is again the perspective that we choose to have and being able, when we are experiencing something that feels awkward, to, okay, what do the other people think and feel right now? Because it's not all about me, but I
Mhm.
have to understand your point of view to make sense out of the situation. So if you see a blind spot that I can't see, but I'm too stubborn to accept that you see something that I don't see,
Mhm.
who am I to judge you that I'm right and you're wrong and all of that nonsense?
Well, first I've got to recognize you and see the value in you as an individual and a person with your own ideas, experiences, etc., etc. And that's something very challenging for many people because, we often are defaulting to competition. We don't see the person as an individual. We don't even think about what's going on in their world. I mean, if you, for instance, get on the bus and somebody gets on and they push past you in a rude way, quite often you judge and you take offense and you make the situation worse. But you never stop for 1 second and say, "Whoa, what's going on in their life to make them
Mm-hmm.
behave that way.
Yeah.
And yet, if you did that, it's a whole different experience. And you don't have to, then go into reaction mode and fight them. But you just, it's just be grateful that you're not in that world and allow them and give them the space that they obviously need in that moment. There's so many ways we can change that behavior, but it comes out of self-recognition and start looking at ourselves and starting to value the good
And
that we
Stuart, tell
are.
me, how do we look at ourselves? What is a way of doing that?
What is a good way, or how do we do it?
Up to you.
Well, I would suggest that the number one thing is we need to discover how much value we have as an individual. And not only value to other people, but to ourselves. And it goes back again to recognizing the achievements you've made. Recognize the greatness that you are because of all the things you've achieved. And that can be done, again, through a success type diary, sitting there journaling, writing down and going back and being honest about all the things that you've achieved. Learning to walk, learning to talk, learning multiplication, learning this, doing all these things, because they're major, major turning points and challenges in your life. But we never recognize it. We never accept that. So we don't see that we're great. And then anything that comes to mind in that journey, which is not so good, recognize that and be grateful for it, because that's an opportunity to grow again. But you've got to be honest, and you've got to take yourself out of the emotion of negativity that's often there. And again, how many people do you know, if you say to them, tell me 100 good things about you, can get past 10 or 20? Very few people I know. And it takes a little bit of doing for you, as an individual, when you do that exercise.
I struggled with that just 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So
but now if I say
journey.
to the same person, tell me 100 things that are bad about you, how easy is that?
Is it because of the bad choices that they make, or is it just because of the way they think about themselves? Or maybe a
it's
mix.
just the way we've been taught to think about
the way
ourselves.
that we've been told, and it's time to tell us
Programmed,
different things.
conditioned.
Exactly. And the way that the moment that we start to tell us different things is the moment that we start changing our lives, because we do override the old programs and we make the new meaning more stronger than the old one. And then actually,
and we do it without judgment.
The moment that no judgment. And the moment that I realized the power of my words, the power of my actions, and they actually have the choice, right, in life, in every single moment, I changed around and I took ownership on my actions and the way that I spoke. And also the moments when I didn't speak, but I should have. Because it's also a way of like, okay, yeah, owning who I am, standing in my power. Many people are giving the power away to external forces that actually do not care about them. And to learn what is good for us. They
don't even recognize it consciously either, do they? That's the challenge. So we've got to be able to do this as a conscious exercise and do it, as we said, without judgment, and be honest. And then look at what's there and see how it's allowed us to grow. And what is the advantage of giving your power to somebody else? Because there is an advantage if you choose to look at it that way.
It's again also the perspective, like how are we perceiving, what is your meaning of power? What is my meaning of power? What is your meaning of happiness? What is my meaning of happiness? I think it is always, again, about like our interpretation of what it is. When I grew up, power was something negative, because what I was introduced to was the rich people have the power, and then I looked at what they do with their power, and I'm like, whoa, this is a dark place that I'm living in. So, right, there are many things that we can look at perspective and the way that we see the meaning of life in general.
Yeah, and if we go back to language, and this is a very, very interesting point, I think the first thing that we're not taught is that words are mere labels. And I would suggest they're just a starting point for a conversation. And the only way we can understand how the other person perceives that word or interprets that word that we chose to use, just like power, is by actually listening with our whole body to their energy, to their reaction, to everything about them when you introduce that word. And know it's a starting point for a conversation. Because we all have these associations with words. We load them with our experiences, our energy, and then we assume that everybody else has to understand it in the way we're using it. And that's BS.
Yeah.
But if we don't get outside of ourselves.
He says BS because he's helping people break through their BS barriers. So this is what Stuart does. So if you have some BS barriers, you know where to reach out to. I like the way that you always have great examples to this. And I mean, the conversations that are, or the experience that you have is obvious in the way that you perceive it. And the label, to talk about that now, what I feel is very important, because I told you already before, I don't like labels. I can use them because I somehow can't go around them. I have to call myself a certain thing, right? Although I would like
they are
not
convenient. That is, language is designed to make life more convenient.
So how can
if
we
take
now
a label
change
of a
it?
chair, it's a useful thing because it gives us a picture in our mind of something which has a value. Now, if we didn't have that label, then how could we communicate about this object? But the trick is to understand what chair you see when I say chair, and for me to show you what chair I see when I say chair. That's where the challenge lies.
And you see a different green than I do.
Yeah.
God knows if you see the same sky than I do.
Well, this is it. I mean, you see an angel. I see, something else. So, just look at the sky with somebody and say, oh, do you see this there, that there? Look at that. And they look at this and say, no, I don't see that. We all perceive things in a different way, but we're still seeing the same thing. We're still seeing the sky with clouds and light and sun. But it's different because we've got our own attachments to it. And I think it's that understanding about language which can enable us, if we get out of our ego and our desire to be superior or right or whatever, that will allow us to have much more meaningful conversations, because now we're taking time to understand how the other person perceives whatever it is.
I want to, before we end the conversation, if you have to give an advice, because I was someone who massively thought about what other people think of me, right? More than I cared about what I think about myself, which is the most important thing I know. So this might be my best advice to give. But for people to discern to themselves and others, and listening to others, asking for others for help, and sometimes not, right? How would you give an advice to discern for them in which situations to listen to what other people say, or even how to find out if this is if that resonates with them? Or do you have any advice to do that? How to do that?
I think one interesting thing is to find a way and be open to finding a way of stepping into their world, how they are seeing things, and then step or think beyond what you're seeing on the surface and think to yourself, okay, what is their upbringing? What's brought them to this conclusion? And try to picture exactly how they're seeing it. And if you still can't, then just ask them, what are they actually seeing? How do they see a chair? What type of chair are they thinking of? I mean, for all I could be sitting on a bed of nails, and that's my chair. And that's what I've been brought up with. For instance, when I first came to China, I think you go to the Forbidden City and a lot of the places like that, they had a little headstool instead of a pillow on the beds. Something I would never have even thought of or even dreamed of, a little stool that you put your head on when you go to bed. We have pillows. That's their pillow, but we're seeing two different things. There's two, so we're not talking together. So if they say, I just dropped the pillow on the floor, and we can ask them, okay, tell me more about that pillow. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And how big is it, et cetera, et cetera. Then we can get a picture and we can start entering into their world. And we start understanding the pillow they see, the pillow they're familiar with. But we've got to get outside of ourselves and think that everybody has the same pillow as we have.
I mean, it even shapes differently through the different head movements that you put your head on the pillow, right? Your unique imprints.
Somebody may have a round pillow. Someone may have a heart-shaped pillow. Someone may have a small, very small pillow. Someone may have a colossal king-size or elephant-sized pillow. You don't know unless you ask.
Different
that's a pillow. That's just one word. Yeah.
Right.
What's the pillowcase like? What color is it? How does it feel?
Exactly. How do you
but
treat
if we don't
it?
ask,
What do you
how
wash
can we
it
talk
with?
about the same thing? So those are things that we have to start looking at, the clues in the energy that the person's giving to you when you're having that conversation. What is their face doing? Are they sitting back? Are they tensing up? Are they whatever? I mean, all these things. I mean, I think I've told you this one before, but I had a conversation with a lady and we were talking about the word benign attention. And in my lexicon, it just means allowing things to be. She closed up when that word was used. And she started getting tense, and you could see it, you could feel it in her bodily energy, everything. And that makes you curious if you allow yourself to be curious. And curiosity is a good skill.
Yeah,
good skill.
When you said that those things, right, and stepping out of ourselves, seeing or trying to see it from another perspective or from the other's perspective, this then allows us, this is curiosity, right? I genuinely show interest in someone. So thank you, Stuart. I appreciate you coming here. Love talking and listening to the wisdom.
We could talk for the next 10 days and still not finish. So it's always wonderful to have that conversation.
In a space where it's where is the end, where is the beginning? Those questions I do sit with at times in my mind. However, where can people find you? What do you want to get off your chest before we stop recording?
The thing that, the best place to find me is either through my email, stuart@spg.bz, and I'll give you that afterwards, or LinkedIn. Those are the two places. And from there, we can get onto a conversation and see what magic we can create through that conversation. And it is a deep conversation. It's not a superficial conversation. And, we've always come away with the most amazing takeaways whenever we have a conversation. So this is what, I love to do.
I had a 3-hour conversation. I think it was the second one that I had with Stuart. I was just listening. I think it was whilst I was fasting. I think it was one of those days. And I've been just sitting in that space of observation and feeling and connecting. It was beautiful. So yeah, thank you for being here. Put your details into the chat. And thanks everyone.
Everything you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that highly. And like, subscribe, and share if you felt this would be valuable for your friends, family, for the people that you love and care about. Type into the comments what you think. What's your takeaway? And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.
Bye.